amongst the conventional wisdoms has been that to succeed in the world, you have to increase more of what you know. I think one of the ways the world is changing now is to succeed in the world, you have to connect more of how you interact with other human beings.
Okay.
I think we're moving into an era where emotional intelligence is going to be more important than IQ.
Right. Okay.
Because you cannot out IQ a computer.
That's true.
So what are you chasing? So the algebraic equations we're taught to solve in school, the code that we're taught to write at technical school, the technical problems we're taught to solve at technical colleges, the mathematical problems we're taught to solve, the accounting problems we're taught to solve, all of those can today be solved by a software that is infinitely faster than you and learning at a rate much faster than you can learn.
Right.
And so I found with a lot of the entrepreneurs that I mentor and coach, the conversation is a lot less about how do you become smarter and a lot more about how do you know what the question is in the first place.
Right.
Let me say it differently. It used to be that you and I, when we were studying for exams, would obsess over the answers.
Yeah.
And so if you remember when you were preparing for exams, you got old exam papers.
Yeah.
And then you'd work the old exam paper because you were trying to learn the answer.
Yeah.
I think we're moving into the era where the question is more important than the answer. And so rather than try to learn what the answer is, we should be asking, what is the question? Let me bring it home here in Kenya.
Yeah.
So how do Kenyan youth build high growth enterprises in a world where there is no aid funding for Kenyan businesses? That's the question you guys are going to have to solve. Because it's pretty clear that the dynamics of aid funding into the rest of Africa are about to change.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the questions we need to solve. So if I'm a young person and I'm thinking about what does the rest of my life look like, what does my trajectory look like, the philosophical question isn't what are the answers. The philosophical question is what is the question? What questions are we asking? How do we build, a more inclusive society? How do we build a country and a continent that is dependent on itself and not dependent on others?
I mean, that will definitely be my follow-up question. I mean, we're in Africa. Africa is our business, but, Africa breaks my heart.
Yeah.
Because the challenges and the opportunities to build, for example, a unicorn in Africa is just really slim.
Sure.
Man, for me as a businessman, what should I be changing? How should I be thinking? And is it even possible for the younger generation to build bigger?
I've got a very controversial view on this, but I don't think Africans should be trying to build unicorns.
Oh, man. Yeah?
Yeah. The Silicon Valleying of Africa is actually incredibly short-sighted and very toxic. Just this morning, I had a meeting with one of the leading venture capital funds in the continent.
Right.
They've been operating for 11 years, and I was talking to the managing partner, and we were actually talking about why the traditional venture capital model is actually wrong for Africa. It fails us.
Okay.
We should not be trying to build a unicorn. A unicorn is $1 billion valuation business. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that. I've got a couple of thoughts. So let me just spread this out.
Yeah.
Doing business in North America is a financial thing.
Yeah.
You do business because you want to make money.
Right.
And the reason is because the societies are so advanced and so well developed that one of the best ways you can contribute to that society is by adding financial value to that society. Doing business in Europe is in part a financial thing. And we were looking at this in the company the other day. We looked at the world's top 100 largest companies in beginning of the 20th century, 1900s. And then if you look at the beginning of the 21st century. And one of the things you notice is the reduction of the European companies in the world's top 100 largest companies.
Yes.
Right. So who would they have been? Would have been, Royal Dutch Shell, right? And you can count them. It's still the same companies today. They don't want to admit it, but with the greatest of respect, Europe stopped innovating 100 years ago.
That is true.
Right. And so, and it's not hard to see. It's because just look at the number of large companies. Now, because we were colonized by the Europeans, one of the things the Europeans did is they embedded in Africa European risk management frameworks. This is why African banks don't lend to African businesses. because we're using European credit scoring and risk models to think about the development of our own economies. But to be clear, when European standards were imposed on Africa, Europe was far more developed than Africa was.
That is true.
Standards have to meet your rate and stage of development. You can't have a set of standards that is inconsistent with your level of development, because rather than the standard improve the economy, it's going to suppress people.
Right.
And you see it here, the amount of regulation that large institutions have to operate under means that a lot of them can't be innovative. But our economies, all of us in Africa, our economies are dominated by large companies. So if large companies aren't being innovative, it means they're not creating new value, which means our economies aren't growing. Now, if you go and ask a CEO of any large bank in Africa and say, why is your innovation index so low? If they're honest, it is low, because they run their own internal scores, which tell them a different story. But in their hearts, they know. They know that their innovation indexes are very, very low. And you're going to ask them, why is your innovation index so low? They'll tell you, regulation doesn't allow me to do these things.
Right.
But who wrote the regulation? And when they wrote it, what was their standard of development in their society? So in Europe, if you do business as an entrepreneur, you are adding in part to kind of the financial system, but you're also trying to drive innovation, right? Think about the founder, for instance, of Klarna, right? These kind of new entrepreneurs in Europe, one of the things they're having to do is to innovate and show that Europe can innovate at the rate of North America. Right. Now let's talk about Africa. If you do business here, sure, it's important that you make money. Of course, it's important that you make money. But for us, business is a lot more about, if you and I succeed in business, this conversation we're having here today, this podcast is about 12 people in this room. Your innovation, your thinking, and your taking the risk has created 12 jobs. Right. Each of these people are probably supporting a family of 5. 12 by 5 is 40. This conversation is supporting 40 mouths. That's how business is different in Africa. Does that make sense? Right. So if I'm chasing a valuation of $1 billion business, it means that the number one metric I'm chasing is valuation. I'm not chasing social impact. Now, a lot of these startups and companies and the VCs that back them and the LPs that back the VCs that back them will tell them, no, but we've got impact scores in our metric. Sure, but I'm asking the question, is the number one metric impact? Is the number one metric social transformation? Is the number one impact bettering the lives of people? Or is the number one impact valuation growth? So I don't really care for whether or not you've created a unicorn. I think it's a great story to sell to, large investors and Silicon Valley type investors, et cetera, et cetera. Right. But I'm more interested in, rather than having $1 billion valuation business, I'm interested in having 10, $100 million valuation businesses, but that have multiplied social inclusion in each of their societies. That for me is a lot more valuable than simply have we created unicorns. A friend of mine often says Africans shouldn't be trying to create unicorns, we should be trying to create zebras. So, there's only one unicorn. But if you go to the jungle, a plethora of zebras. We need more zebras. We need more of these businesses that can absorb more of the latent potential of young people. In my country, South Africa, 60 million people. The unemployment rate of young people is well over 50%. I can't afford to be trying to build a unicorn that's going to make me a billionaire. What I should be trying to do is to create a business that's going to create opportunities for these young people. I think our thinking needs to change.
You have no idea how much validation you've just given me. I make films and sell directly to Africans, and so I'm in the process of trying to raise funds, and this is the conversation I've been telling them, because a lot of the times if you want someone to fund your film, they are asking if your TV show, your film is the next Squid Games, for example, because they want that global dominance. And I'm from the point of view where there's so many African stories, indigenous, authentic African stories, deeply rooted in, different tribes. We first need to tell those stories before we think of conquering the world.
I need to just add something to that. I think the fundamental question should be, what problem are we solving for? Right. If the problem we're solving for is financial risk and reward, there is no way your business was going to outperform the financial risk and reward of any investor who could put money in the bond market.
Right.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What is the interest rate here in Kenya? Do you know? The lending
from
rate?
the banks, around 18%.
18%.
Yeah.
I can only imagine what the government 10-year T-bill is. Okay. So if I'm an investor, I could take my money and put it in a government T-bill.
Right.
With a risk-adjusted return, the risk part is zero. It's the government. It's not going to default. Well,
Okay.
But you get the point that I'm making, right? So it's the government. It's not going to default.
Yeah,
which means I can put my capital. Let's say that, I don't know, the 20-year T-bill. Let's imagine it's at 20% or whatever the case might be. I can put my money into that 10-year T-bill or 5-year T-bill.
Right.
I'm going to get a 20% return, and I'm assuming zero risk. Now, when I come talk to you, first, you're a startup.
Yeah.
You're founder-led. You are illiquid, which means you're not listed. If I put shares in your business, I can't go and trade them on an exchange, say. I've got to quantify each of these risks.
Right.
Which means you've got to generate 45% return before I take the meeting with you.
Oof.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so as an investor, there isn't sufficient financial incentive for me to put money in your business.
That's true.
So just go to Malawi. Just go to Malawi. Love Malawi. It's one of my favorite parts of the continent. Go to Zambia and you'll see this. You see a similar thing, right? When there's capital available, liquid capital, particularly in wealthy circles, high net worth families, family offices, individuals, it migrates into real estate or T-bills.
That's true.
It doesn't go into the real economy. It doesn't finance businesses. It doesn't create new jobs.
No.
Because we're chasing the wrong metric. We're chasing this metric around financial return. Now, I'm not saying don't chase financial return.
Yeah.
I am saying what's the chief metric that you're solving for? If the Europeans were simply chasing financial metric, they wouldn't have had the developments they had in the 1800s.
That's true.
If the Americas were simply chasing for financial metric, they wouldn't have had the innovation they had in the 1900s. We have to solve for different set of metric than simply, am I generating a financial